Welcome to the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast, where we help law enforcement leaders succeed at work and in life. If you like what you hear today, we hope you'll consider sharing this episode with a colleague or a friend. And don't forget to check out our previous episodes for more valuable insights. Today's topic is not only urgent, but close to many of our hearts. It's the role of a law enforcement leader in preventing officer burnout. As you know, in the past several years, we've lost a lot of good law enforcement leaders. Some of this is due to politics, the national narrative, and the increasing pressure and liabilities. While this brings opportunities to reshape the profession and do things better than we have in the past, there's a problem. Many new and incoming officers lack the role models and mentors they need to navigate the challenges of our job. And even worse, some of our current leaders lack the seasoned development to truly inspire and guide future generations. This is the heart of why we started this podcast. And today, we want to talk about how the current global situation is affecting officer safety and pouring gasoline on officer burnout. Let's break this down in a simpler way. I want you to imagine you're a new police officer, fresh on the job. It's like starting a new school. Everything's unfamiliar, and it can be pretty overwhelming. Now, normally, you'd have some experienced officers, kind of like the older school kids. These would show you the ropes. They would help you out when things get tough and give you tips on how to handle the stress of the job. But what if those experienced officers aren't really around and they're not too great at guiding you? This can give you the feeling of being lost. Without these mentors, you're kind of left to figure things out on your own. This can make you feel lost, unsupported, and I gotta tell you, that's pretty stressful. It can lead to you worrying all the time. Since you don't have someone to guide you or to confirm that you're doing things right, you might start second-guessing yourself a lot. That leads to constant worrying, which can really be draining. How about not knowing how to cope? Usually these seasoned officers teach you how to deal with the tough parts of your job. Without them, you might not know the best way to handle stress, and that can lead to some unhealthy habits. Picking up bad habits? If the officers who are supposed to be leading aren't setting a good example, you might end up picking up some of their not so great ways of doing things. This can create a pretty negative environment at work. Some of us might feel stuck. Mentors don't just help you with the day-to-day stuff. They also help you grow and move forward in your career. Without them, you might feel like you're stuck in one place, and that can really be frustrating. Or how about feeling alone in and amongst a large team? Part of being in law enforcement is feeling like you're part of the team, part of the family. If you don't have that connection with experienced officers, you might feel like you're going at it alone, and that's tough. All of this stress, feeling lost, not having support, it really starts to weigh on you mentally and emotionally. And when that happens, day in and day out, it can lead to officer burnout, where you just feel exhausted and start to care less about the job. So in a nutshell, when new cops don't have good mentors or leaders, it makes an already tough job even harder. They end up feeling overwhelmed, stressed, and kind of on their own, which can really burn them out. Now, officer burnout isn't just a buzzword. It's a significant issue that's impacting law enforcement agencies globally. The external problem is clear. Long hours, high-risk situations, and the constant emotional toll of the job. Internally, there's the cumulative stress, the lack of mental health resources, and sometimes the stigma attached to seeking help. We've talked a lot about that stigma right here on this show. Philosophically, we're faced with a conundrum. How do we reconcile the tough cop image with the very human need for rest, support, and recovery? Now let's bring this into perspective. Let's use a real life example. I want you to imagine an officer, let's call her Jane. She's passionate about her job, about serving her community. But lately, she's been feeling exhausted, short-tempered, and delusioned. She's not sleeping well, and because of shift work, she's started to feel disconnected from her loved ones. Jane's experiencing burnout, but she's worried that asking for a break or seeking help will make her seem weak in the eyes of her peers and her superiors. Sadly, this scenario is much more common than many of us would like to admit. As law enforcement leaders, we play an indispensable role in recognizing, addressing, and preventing officer burnout. Our influence can ensure the well-being of their officers and the effectiveness of their departments. Leaders, we need to take that seriously. So what's the solution? Well, it starts with leadership acknowledging and understanding burnout, and then fostering an environment where officers feel supported and able to take the necessary steps for their mental and physical health without judgment or penalty. If we don't tackle officer burnout head on, the stakes are enormous. We risk the health and the lives of our officers. We see a dip in job performance and a spike in absenteeism. In worst case scenarios, valuable officers begin leaving our force. Not to mention the impact on their families and the community relations. Now, here's an actionable plan for all leaders listening. And I'm not just talking to those of you that hold the rank, but I'm talking about those of you that are informal leaders or leaders in your organization. First, educate yourself and your team about the signs of burnout. Knowledge is power, friends. Second, create and promote a culture of openness where officers can talk about their stress and their challenges. And I have to tell you that this starts with you as the leader. You have to be the one that's taking that step. As has been noted, that stigma still exists in law enforcement. But if their leader is taking that first step, if their leader is talking about the stress and the challenges of the job, that will welcome that conversation to those officers that are experiencing those same stresses and challenges. Third, provide resources. This could be counseling services, mental health days, wellness programs, or stress management training. You really need to get with that officer and find out what's going to be best for them in the situation that they are facing at the time. Fourth, let's set reasonable expectations. This includes fair shift patterns, clear job roles, and adequate downtime. The confusion of their shift, the confusion of the expectation and what their role is going to be can really drive to that burnout. Fifth, I want you to lead by example. Show your team that self-care is a priority by practicing what you preach. Sometimes this can be difficult, but we need to relate that to those that we are working with or that we are responsible for. Let's face it, there's a lot at stake if we ignore this problem. Let's talk about what happens if a leader doesn't pay attention to burnout amongst their officers. It's kind of like ignoring that check engine light on your car. Eventually, something's going to go wrong, and it could be serious. This can lead to increased errors. First off, when officers are burned out, they're not at their best. They're tired, stressed, maybe even a bit checked out. It's like trying to do your job after pulling an all-nighter. You're more likely to make mistakes, miss important details, forget procedure, or make poor judgments. In law enforcement, these aren't just little oops moments. They can have serious consequences. How about the strained community relations? Now, think about how this affects the people our officers interact with every day, the community. If officers are burned out, they might come off as grumpy, impatient, or uncaring. It's like when you're in a bad mood and you accidentally snap at a friend. But in this case, it can harm the trust and the relationship between the police and the community. People really start thinking these officers don't care about us, or they're always in a bad mood. That's not good for anyone. This can lead to potential tragedy. This is the part no one wants to think about, but it's really important. When officers make more mistakes because they're burned out, it increases the risk of something tragic happening. Maybe they react too slowly in a critical situation, or maybe they misjudge something because they're just too tired or stressed to think clearly. It's like driving when you're really sleepy. Your reaction time is off and your decision making isn't sharp. So, what does this mean for a leader in law enforcement? Well, it means they've got a big responsibility. They can't just ignore it. When their officers are showing signs of burnout, it's not about being tough or sucking it up. It's about taking care of your team so they can do their job well and safely. It's about noticing when someone is struggling and offering help. Maybe it's a day off, some support, or just a listening ear. In a way, it's like being the captain of a ship. If the captain doesn't take care of the crew, the whole ship can run into trouble. The captain needs to keep an eye on things, make sure everyone's okay, and step in when someone needs a break or someone needs help. It's all about keeping the crew and the ship running smoothly and safely. So let's dive in a little bit deeper into how a leader can really make a difference in preventing officer burnout. We're talking about creating a plan that leads to a more positive work environment for everyone in the force, especially like our officer, Jane. We need to create a healthier workforce for her. Imagine a leader who really looks out for their team's well-being. This means recognizing when someone's stressed and needs a break, or maybe just a chat to get things off their chest. When officers know their leader cares about their health, they're likely to take better care of themselves as well. It's kind of like when someone reminds you to drink water or take a break from staring at your computer. This really does make a difference. A happier team? We all know that when the team is happy, it's healthy. It's less stressed. Naturally, it's going to bring that good, healthy, happy shift. Think about how you feel after a good day, where everything just clicks. That's the kind of vibe we're aiming for. A leader can set this tone by being positive, approachable, and fair. It's like if your boss throws a small thank you party after a tough project. It just feels good, right? How about more engagement? Here's where it gets even better. When officers are healthier and happier, they're more likely to be engaged with their work. They're not just showing up and going through the motions. They're actively involved in trying to do their best. It's like when you're really into a hobby and you put your heart into it. This produces better performance. This one's a no-brainer. Happier and healthier, more engaged officers are going to do a better job. They're sharper, more focused, and ready to handle whatever comes their way. It's like when you're feeling good, you cook a better meal or you play a better game. This also leads to a positive community engagement. Now, think about how all of this reflects on our community. Officers like Jane are out there not just doing their job, but also connecting with people, helping out, and showing that they genuinely care. This builds trust and makes the community see our role, the police, the sheriff's office, in a better light. It's similar to when you know someone in your neighborhood who's always friendly and helpful. You just have a good feeling about them. It can also inspire new recruits. When new recruits see officers like Jane who are happy, engaged, and doing well, they're inspired. They think, hey, this is a great place to work, and I can really make a difference here. It's like when you see someone enjoying their job, it makes you think it might be a cool place to work. It's also about building public trust. Finally, all of this adds up to building more trust with the public. When people see officers who are professional, friendly, and genuinely care about their community, it changes how they view the police. It's like if you have a good experience at a store, you're likely to trust that brand more. A strong, well-equipped leader will play a huge role in shaping the work environment. By looking after their team's well-being, creating a positive atmosphere, and encouraging good performance, they're setting their officers up for success. This not only benefits the officers themselves, but it also ripples out to our community, inspiring new recruits and building a stronger, more trusting relationship with the public. So let's wrap this up and really hammer home the big picture here. When we're talking about preventing officer burnout, we're not just talking about being nice or doing a good deed. This is a key strategy for any leader who wants their law enforcement team to be effective, reliable, and respected. I want you to think of it this way. When our officers are well taken care of, when they're not stretched to the breaking point, they're like well-oiled machines. They perform better, they make smarter decisions, and they interact with the public in ways that builds trust and respect. It's like if you take good care of your car, keeping up with the maintenance, it runs smoothly and you avoid breakdown. Here's the real kicker. The well-being of our officer is directly linked to the well-being of our communities. It's a two-way street. When officers are healthy, mentally and physically, they bring their best selves to the job. This means they handle situations with more patience, empathy, and clarity. It's like when you're feeling good, you're more patient with your family, your friends, and even strangers. For leaders in law enforcement, this is your call to action. Your role is so much more important than just managing a team. You have the power to influence lives, not just the lives of your officers, but every person they interact with. You are the role model, you are the guide, and you are the support system. By taking steps to prevent burnout, you're not just looking after your team, you're impacting your entire community. It's like being a coach of a sports team. If the players are exhausted and demotivated, the whole team's performance suffers, along with their fans' spirit. So take your role seriously. Be the leader who steps in, who recognizes when things are off track, and have the courage to say, let's fix this. It's about being proactive, about creating an environment where your officers know that their well-being is a priority. This isn't just about avoiding the bad stuff. It's about creating a positive, healthy, and thriving department. Remember, the strength of a law enforcement agency lies not just in its policies and its procedures, but more importantly, its people. When you take care of your officers, when you help them steer clear of burnout, you're building a stronger, more effective force. You're not just maintaining the status quo, you're elevating the entire profession. In the end, the message is clear. Preventing officer burnout is a critical strategy for any effective law enforcement leader. It's about compassion, yes, but it's also about making smart, strategic choices for the good of your officers, your organization, and most importantly, your community. Be the leader who makes a difference, the one who sees the big picture and acts not just for today, but for a better, more sustainable future in law enforcement. Well, that's all for this week's episode of the Elevate Your Call to Service podcast. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. We invite you to visit our website at leleaders.com for our free guide, 10 questions to consider before putting in for your next promotion. Until next time, stay safe and remember, you have the power to make a difference. Thank you for your commitment to law enforcement. We are honored to be a part of your journey to success. Let's elevate our call to service together.